Welcome to the Hotbox Show on this absolutely freezing Arctic day in Johannesburg, South Africa. We're very pleased to be here in the Hotbox studio tonight. We've cranked up the heat, we've cranked up the spliffs, and we're looking forward to a slightly reduced amount of people around the table tonight, unfortunately. South Africa's longest running cannabis culture and information show is very pleased to present Just Dale, who's here with us tonight, looking warm and snug, and Joe Lackading, who seems to be in the best of spirits as usual. And I'd like to just start by just explaining what happened to us last week. Charles put up his classic SABC test pattern to say that we decided to just put the show on hold for last week. We decided that it would have been in somewhat bad taste because South Africa was burning. You know, Thursday last week we were still reeling from the shock of what was going on in our streets here in Gauteng and in KZN. And we decided that us sitting here getting stoned around a table couldn't do justice to the enormity that was going on. So we actually decided to cancel the show with respect for all of those people who are suffering so dreadfully and who are still suffering. And tonight we're thinking about all the people out there in the cold who don't have adequate shelter. Tonight, please make sure that your pets are inside. We believe it's going to go down to -5, at least in Johannesburg. And while you might be watching us from Europe, which I hope you are, or from Mexico, as I know Amy K's King is, where it's nice and warm there at the moment, like 30 degrees or something, this is unseasonally Arctic weather. So bed down, snuggle up, put your pets in your lap, and get ready for the Hotbox Show, episode 183. So we're going to start off with the poll. And tonight, thank you, Captain Stream, who can't be with us tonight. That's our dear Nelio. And neither can Dan, because he believes he has COVID, so best he stays at home.
He can't smell his weed, he says to
Yeah,
us,
he
guys,
can't
I
smell
can't
his
smell
weed."
the weed.
Definitely positive, no test required. So that's why it's just the three of us, but we're having fun and we've got our studio audience. We've got Boomschlang in the driving seat behind the table. We've got Amy and the ever-faithful Nick right here, and of course all the dogs keeping warm here in the studio. So our poll tonight, with thanks to Nelio, is there really more research required in Dagga? You know, we've been hearing this for so many years, decades actually, but more research needs to be done, What do you think? Our poll is on Facebook only, remember? And please go there and select your selection. What do you think? More research? For sure. More research, analysis paralysis, really? Or hashtag overgrow the government. So stuff the research, let's just plant. We're so sick of this research thing, or more research really needs to be done. I know what you guys think, but I think that we can never know enough.
Yes.
Don't you think?
I think that there does, yes, especially when it comes to our local cannabis and our landrace strains. Because we need to be, we'll be talking about that later, about protecting them, and we can't protect it unless we know what it's exactly, you know, its profiles are.
Yeah.
What it is exactly, like you're saying, that makes
I agree.
it so special. More research.
Look, we can
I'd say
never.
more
But
research, yeah.
we need to enable the people to be able to do research. With the current laws, they
Yeah.
can't.
To see what the
Look,
European stuff does.
Innovation requires research and constantly knowing how to improve what we're doing. But at the same time, in terms of talking about legalization and how to move forward with an industry, no more research needed.
Exactly.
That's all done.
Yeah.
They just now need to listen to the people who've done the research.
Yeah, so it's a bit
Go
of a
play science,
nuanced
bitches.
argument, this one.
Yeah.
So,
It's blatantly obvious what a miracle this plant is. So
Yeah, and when this whole fact of more research needs to be done is brought up as an excuse to not progress with legalization, then that's the problem. More
Yes.
research, we used to hear that so much in the old days. More research, we don't know enough. Well, what do you want to know about weed? This people around this table will be able to tell you a thing or two, and I'm sure most of our regular viewers will also be able to tell you a hell of a lot about
The
weed.
problem is that it's anecdotal. It just gets classed as
Your
opinions and fantasy.
But I must say, you know, here at Fields of Green, we belong to quite a few international groups. And there's been lots of interesting research coming through those Telegram groups over the last few months. And what's really nice is that it's moving towards, slowly towards the more traditional use of cannabis, because I think that the world is waking up to the traditional use of cannabis. And remember, for the trial of the plant, we had our 4 platforms, you know? So we've got our responsible adult use, which is all of us. We had our traditional, cultural, and religious use. And I think that that is where the research needs to be focused. And we're going to be speaking a little bit later about something about landrace strains and research into them and traditional use. But you know what? It might be very smoky around in this room, but I think it's time for some lank dank.
We do. We need to see what.
So what have we got there, teamies?
We got some real lank to the dank.
Come on, sing us a song. Come on, sing us a song.
We got a really nice Afghan here. If you guys want to take a look.
Indoor, outdoor?
This is an indoor strain.
Indoor.
It was grown indoors, hence why your buds are much tighter and denser. This is not something I'm going to smoke in the beginning of the show. I'm going to wait till a little bit later. It's not something you want to smoke at parties or social events. It's really going to make you chill out and be a little bit antisocial. So we'll leave that a little bit later.
Well, personally, Afghan is one of my absolute favorite strains of all time. It's my weekend smoke. It's my sleeping pill. Yeah. So Afghan is one of those amazing OG strains that is the reason why we smoke a bit of weed at the end of the day to actually forget about the crazy day that we've had. So
no, I agree with you. I mean, I don't smoke things to go out and do activities. I smoke it like you would drink your glass of wine at the end of the day to relax. Hence why this is such a great relaxer.
Yeah.
Yes.
You won't smoke it throughout the day though. Wait
Oh,
till
no.
I was quite amazed though with this Afghan when I saw it that it's really quite purple, and it can't be because it's grown in winter, because it's grown indoor. So it would be interesting. We just had a delivery and I didn't get a chance to actually speak to the person who grew it. So it would be interesting to find out why it is so purple. I've never really seen too much Afghan being purple. But having said that, it's my sleeping tablet. It's also really good for really thoughtful creativity. But you've got to decide what you're going to do before you smoke it. You see, that's a thing with a lot of the indica. I mean, we don't really differentiate sativa and indica. That's a bit old-fashioned. But the more indica-leaning strains is that you need to decide what you're going to do. Okay, now I'm going to do a painting. Now I'm going to write some poetry, whatever. And then these strong indicas can be very inspiring.
Have all your tools ready.
Ice some cookies. Yeah, set your intention.
Eat
Plant
some
medicine.
cake. We've got some cake here, just by the way. Because it was so cold when I went to the shop today. I thought, oh no, man, we need some cake. So we're going to have some cake straight after the Fields of Green update. And if you guys rolling, I'm feeling THC levels a bit,
Here we go down.
So
roll the joint.
at Fields of Green this week, we've been making quite a lot of progress on the legal front. Unfortunately, I can't give too many details because until certain papers are in certain courtrooms, we can't disclose too much because one never knows what happens with these papers being handed into the courts. I also had a nice long conversation today for about an hour and a half with Neil from the Hayes Club. They're waiting for their set-down date in the name of their judge, and they're expecting it to be sometime in September. And I'm really proud of that young man. You know, since the first time that we met him, and we met him down in Cape Town in February this year, he's really come a long way. And it's not easy for him, having lost his business and having to make do financially for him and his family. It's very difficult. So he's really developed such a consciousness about cannabis. You know, isn't it nice sometimes? Dale, you've been around with us for years. Joe's been around for longer than I can even remember. Isn't it nice when you see the young people growing up?
Yes.
I mean, even you're a
We've
young
watched
person.
you grow up.
Yeah.
We've watched you
Change-
grow up,
yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
I love to tell the story of how Dale joined the team at Fields of Green. I got this I think it was a text message or something from this young guy who said, can I come and help at your stall for D-Day? And I said, sure, we never say no to help. And it was Dale, and he came and helped, and he's been at every single D-Day since then, and now he's on the Hotboxshow, now he's part of the Fields of Green team. So it's really nice for us oldies to watch the younger people grow up and really come into themselves and stand in their own power. And I can say that Neil from the Hayes Club is certainly one of those people, and he's really become an asset to cannabis law reform in South Africa. But that's the young people, and we really I love surrounding myself with lots and lots of young people. But this week we also had the very, very sad news that came in yesterday morning, that Frenchie Cannoli had passed away. Now, if you're a young person, maybe you don't know who Frenchie Cannoli is. There he is up on the screen. Isn't that a beautiful face? Frenchie is French, as you could say, and he is the legendary hash maker. Now, Jules and I never met Frenchie in person, but it feels like we've met him because we've met so many people who are so close to him. The first time we heard his name was through Simon Strainhunter, and then last March when we were in Barcelona, we met Mila, the hash queen, and her and Frenchie are like brother and sister, and it was really great to meet that hash legend. You know, she was in India in the 60s when they were rubbing charas. Jules also spent time up there in Manali rubbing charas. So there's that whole generation where those times are past now. And unfortunately, Frenchie went in for surgery and there was complications, and he passed away on Tuesday night. So we'd like to send our condolences to Madame Cannoli. Frenchie worked for many years in the southwest of France and in northern Spain. And really perfecting various hash making skills. And if you're interested in that amazing thing called hash, I really would encourage you to go and look at his Instagram feed and go and watch some of his videos. You really will learn a lot. When I was in England in the 90s, you know, all that there was to smoke was hash.
Yeah.
You know? And a lot of people that are my age or people who've spent time in the UK know that, I don't know about now, but certainly in years gone by, it was impossible to get wheat flour. Hey, when you were in England, did you
No, it was
smoke
really,
flour?
really difficult. Yeah.
Difficult and whatever, and yeah, Frenchie's one of those guys who from those days has carried on the tradition of hash. So we're just sending our condolences to his friends and family. And other things that are in the news, Joe suggested to me just before the show that we give out a really nice big shout out to a media house called Cannabis Africa. Now, Charles has been speaking to both Brett, who's the publisher, Brett Hilton Barber, and Romanus Borain, who is the main journalist. And we've got Charles on the blower on the other side just to tell us how this relationship with Cannabis Africa has panned out over the last few months. Charles, are you there?
Yes, I am. Hello.
Hello. So, Charles, tell us about your meeting with Brett and Romanus and how we're developing this working relationship with them.
You know, I noticed their stories because I have something that they call a news crawler that goes on the internet and brings me news with keywords for data and cannabis and you know the field that we're in. And their stories kept on coming up, and in the end, I had to make contact, and I sent them a mail, and we set up a Zoom meeting. And they turned out to be really nice people, you know. It's good to have a media company that's got a cannabis focus. There aren't many of them around. This is about the only one that I think we have in this country. And the mainstream media don't always approach cannabis from the right angle, and they seem to do exactly that. And they've kind of slotted in quite nicely next to the content at Fields of Green that we publish at Fields of Green from time to time. So it's good to have somebody else running next to you in the race, you know.
Exactly, because, you know, especially in the last sort of 6 months or so, it's been very difficult for the Fields of Green team to keep up with the content.
Yeah.
Because it takes approximately 3 hours to write a blog post. But that's if you're writing blog posts every few days, you know. But if your turn to write the post only comes by in another 3 weeks, you're going to take 4 hours to write that blog post because it's not something that you're doing every day. I'm sure, Charles, you would agree with me there.
Yeah, you get into a rhythm if you write often now.
Yeah.
At Cannabis Africa, I can't even keep up with all their content. I have to remind myself to go and check every day because they tend to publish stuff at least twice a week, and then it's not one story, it's 3 or 4 or 5 at a time. And they've been doing this quietly in the background for a while. So if you go on their website, there's a massive backlog of really good content,
Yes.
which they seem to shuffle up quite nicely. I bump into good stories from time to time that I didn't notice before. So they kind of, change the menu every time you visit, so you see something else. So yeah, it's a good site to visit if you feel like some good reading. I haven't picked up too many skewed opinions,
No,
cannabis
me neither.
is a very difficult subject to approach, and one has to have a full spectrum view of all the issues around the plant, and they seem to really get it quite right.
They have been my go-to for sourcing when we're doing sourcing information for the show. This evening, all 3 stories, my information I've sourced from Cannabis Africa because they've got the best information. So I'm very grateful for them because it's nice to have some quality cannabis content, relevant. It's like
they've even managed to squeeze in an interview with Tito Mboweni.
Exactly.
Something that the mainstream media haven't been able to do.
Yeah.
All
Exactly.
they have had is like a little picture of his weed plant that leaked onto Twitter. They haven't spoken to the man, but Cannabis Africa, they have.
Yeah, they were very quick to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was really excited because in the 1980s I lived in Yeovil, and there was I used to hang out with lots of journos and media people and that, and I remember Brett Hilton Barber from then. And I was just sort of like a young student in those days, and I sent him, he sent me an email asking about something the other day, and I sent an email back and said to him, we used to hang out in Yeovil, sort of, in those days. He says, no, I remember you and your friend Susie and whatever. So he's a really, really seasoned journalist. He comes from a long line of journalist/activist people in his family. So I think that's also one of the reasons why we're seeing mature reporting from them. And it really is the first time that we've seen that. Now, we're not talking about cannabis culture publications like Seven Leaf, who we must catch up with Sam sometime soon. We're talking about a media house that is pumping out that content. And sometimes we feel at Fields of Green we're a little bit alone in that space in terms of serious content. So we're very pleased to be partnering with them, aren't we?
Yes.
Yes.
Very much so. Maybe they should help Chiba write the journalist's guide to writing about cannabis.
What a good idea.
Can help.
The
Trenton, are you watching?
journalists in South Africa need to learn how to write about cannabis. I'm tired of hearing about the difference between dacha and medicinal cannabis. It's all the same plant. But anyway, so we love cannabisafrica.com. Thank you guys for insisting.
Yeah, the subject has a bottomless pit, and one of the stories they published recently was on the, did they say, biopiracy of cannabis. There's this danger that they could come and, remove our strains by planting too many foreign cultivars that poison our local gene pool.
Well, this is actually our second story for
you
tonight.
guys are discussing.
That's our second story for tonight, as we're talking about the biopiracy.
Yeah, I mean, I've not seen any stories on that subject before. Fields of Green have maybe touched on it, but this is the first time in recent months, anyway, that I see anything on the subject. And it's a fascinating subject and an important one, I believe.
Yes, it is. Yes,
a very, very important one. I think that Russ Yellow, Warren, is going to be joining us just a little bit later to speak about that. Anyway, I've said enough for now, and we're going to do CBDNN.
Okay, so our first story for this evening is we're going to be talking about this Burgood. How do you think you pronounce it? Birguds. Burgood's industry
Burgood.
report for cannabis in Southern Africa. So they've taken 6 countries in Southern Africa and they've done a whole bunch of research. They did it last year and they've done it again this year. I didn't come across it last year. I've only come across it now.
It sounds like Prohibition Partners. Remember their African Cannabis Report?
Yeah. But these guys, we've been looking into forecasting sort of market values, and they actually, when I first saw it, I was like, oh, they think they've spoken to the people. We haven't heard.
Yeah.
They didn't ask us any questions, but why would they? We're trying to change the laws. They're looking into the market.
They're looking
the
into
industry. And the industry
Any
sort of
publication
things.
that comes out is good.
Any
you know,
publication, all
because
research
it's-
is good research.
Yeah, back to that research thing. You know, but even if it is holding up a mirror to something that really is overselling the plant, like the Prohibition Partners report that came out in 2019. But these guys, we've been sort of looking around what they're doing, and Joe's contacted them.
Well, I've reached out to them to see if they could explain to us in sort of layman's terms, bring their whole huge paper and
Yeah, but
reports
just
and
stop
everything.
there, Leon. Just stop there.
Yeah.
By now.
Because their full report of however many pages, and I'm sure it's incredibly intense and it's really good for investors and people who have got the money for it, is 15,000 Rand. So like me, Joe on the street wouldn't be able to afford that. If you want to get an analysis of just like of the 6 regional countries in general, and that's without going into the specifics of each country, that report is 7,500 Rand. If you'd like your South African cannabis forecast, and this is a forecast from 2021 right through to 2025, with rationale, key discussion points for cannabis entrepreneurs and investors. That's 2,500 Rand.
I think we'll get the guys from CTA, Cannabis Trade Association.
Yeah.
They can pay for it, and then they can share it with us, and then we can discuss
Well,
it
I'm
on
hoping that
the
we can
show.
open up a dialogue with them, because I would like to find out from them, like, how do you do this kind of research? It's fascinating to me. How do you do this kind of research? Who did they speak to? Who commissioned the research? Who's paid for it? Or was it their own idea because they're charging for each report? For the rest of the countries, which are Lesotho, Zimbabwe, Malawi, and Eswatini, it's 1,500 Rand for those. And
Zambia.
And Zambia, sorry, you're right. I wanted to just get down to where they get to what it includes and why you would be buying this report. Because obviously it's not the kind of thing that like man on the street is really going to go into. But there are people who are looking into investing, international investors, local investors. So this report includes current developments on the regional cannabis industry post-COVID-19 pandemic. There's updated market analysis from 2016 through to 2020. There's value chain review of market dynamics, 5-year forecasts of market trends and market growth through to 2025, an overview of key projects across each of the profiled market, and conclusions and recommendations to be implemented during the forecast period. Why they think that you should buy this report? It's an updated analysis of South Africa's cannabis industry and key Southern African states. It's a review of key industry trends, opportunities, and challenges. It's to inform business strategy and market development. It's to inform sales and supply strategies, to inform industry partnerships and collaborations, and to inform investment decisions. They do believe that all of this can only be done through, where did it go? Through government support from a research, entry barrier removal, and a downstream opportunity facilitation. These guys are very pro entry barrier removal. They would like to see this market. Yeah, so maybe they do get back to me through the week. I only found out about this morning, so I reached out a bit late. I don't think this is a bad thing. I think
No, I
this is
don't
quite
think it's
interesting.
a bad thing. Well, you know, we're
Get to
always
see
on
what's in
the
it.
we're always on the defensive
Defensive.
with the overselling thing, you know. But it's a great world out there, and then there's room for There's room for everybody.
Yeah.
You know, it's a big.
Their website is full of
It's a big
information,
space.
So.
Yeah, and the more information, the better, because
Yeah.
then we can evaluate that. Let's hope they get back to us.
Let's hope they get back
Let's
to us
hope
because
they
I'm
do.
very,
But
very
they're all
keen.
about the commodity side of it.
Yeah.
It's all
Yeah.
about stocks and
Yeah, it's fascinating.
unlocking cannabis economies and things. So it's good to see that there's someone else looking from that point of view,
The business side
Yeah.
of things. Yeah,
from the outside in almost.
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Oh well, that's great. Let's hope they get back to us. Yep.
Yep.
And now we just touched on it, and Dale is going to tell us a little bit more about what we found out about biopiracy and why is it an issue.
Yes, protecting our land races, the culture of our local cannabis from biopiracy. Now, biopiracy is the practice of commercially exploiting natural occurring biochemical or genetic material, especially by obtaining patents that restrict its future use, while failing to pay the compensation to the community from where the genetics come from.
Yeah.
So we look at the example of Durban poison, which has allegedly been patented by a European market, and that means that breeders in South Africa cannot use anything like it ever again, and phasing out its
Yeah.
true genetic.
My first question: how can you grow Durban poison if you're not in Durban?
Exactly.
I don't
understand.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Same with Thai stick. You can't grow Thai stick anywhere else except for Asia.
And there is no system in place to even begin protecting land races. One problem is that there is no system for high THC land races to be classified in the Department of Agriculture, Rural Development and Land Affairs within the National Seed Registry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, as the National Master Plan points out, there is currently no formal seed supply for the cannabis due to the fact that it is treated as an illegal commodity. Seed is currently obtained via informal markets and network. This creates a regulatory challenge in the quality of seeds that are traded. So, in other
It
words,
does.
people
We've
are
all
bringing
bought
in,
duds that
Yeah.
don't germinate, haven't we?
We have.
Yeah.
Buy a kilo of it.
yeah, so low germination percentages and so on.
Yeah.
But that's other than the fact that these are also genetics coming out of Europe, for example. And this has been happening for a long time, even in guerrilla grows back in the day in Swaziland and Lesotho. People used to, for example, get RQA seeds and go out into the bush and grow a bunch of feminized plants that they don't realize gets cross-pollinated, or maybe they grow males or Hermes, and that
Yeah.
gets cross-pollinated with our land races.
Mm.
Yeah.
And then you'll no longer see your original Swazis, even the stuff you're buying at the taxi ranks now.
Yeah.
You won't find Swazi ever again.
But
It's
now
all hybrid.
let me tell you something interesting that I've learned along the way. And I learned this from the late, great Franco, who's up there hashing and dabbing with Jules and Frenchie. Is Franco explained to us that it takes approximately 3 years of those wild plants to just be left wild before the genetics of the landrace come up to the full again. So I think the biopiracy thing is more of a corporate capture type issue rather than something that, oh, we're going to lose those land races.
Yeah.
Because Franco, you know, being a strain hunter, and Simon has also told us a lot about this, and I've spoken to Arian about it as well, is they saw it over and over again, particularly in places like India. You know, the hippies had come in, they'd grown all of their whatever specialized strain, they'd left, and 2, 3, 4 years later, poop, there comes the landrace looking exactly the same and whatever.
Yeah.
So we're not worried about that. We're worried about people making money off
Money
of
off of
our,
Trying to-
yeah.
our
Do the
Swazi
profile, the
gold or
terpene
our.
profile thing and going, okay, we own the rights to this exact sort of profile. That's
Hard,
that's
Yeah. So that they
Hard.
could use it to breed other strains, and no one else in their competitive market can use that as well to breed their
Bit of a
plants.
Monsanto move, DuPont
Yeah.
move.
Yeah.
So.
yeah.
So it's very complex because it's also this issue of appellations of origin.
Yeah.
It's also something that we've only really been learning about over the last few years. So it's like you can't call it port if it's not from Portugal. You can't call it champagne if it's not from the Champagne region in France. So you can't call it Durban poison if it's not from Durban. And plus
Yeah.
it's not called Durban anymore, it's eThekwini.
Yeah.
So
Exactly.
what are we going to do about that? We don't know. We don't know.
We'll figure it out.
But we hope
Next
that
week's
there's-
poll.
But there's many more. There's your Roybards, and there's
Yeah.
so many more, guys, that people have actually forgotten about. When last did you even smoke anything close to what was Roybard or Durban poison, you know?
Well, I ordered some seeds from our dear brothers and sisters at Green Smoke Room, some autos just to grow over winter, just for fun. And in that they threw in three free Roybard seeds. And it warmed my heart. And we haven't got any Roybard for a little while. And it's a really nice strain, really hardy, good yielder, great for medicine. So there isn't really an answer to this thing of biopiracy, but we can say to those people who've got all the money, and those people like in the last article with all of their projections and billions and squillions, we can say to them, you know, just step away. Go make your own strains in your... in
I think
your-
there is a solution. I think you could stop your multinationals from buying those genetics. You definitely could.
patenting them
Yes,
or
by showing that
capturing
we
them.
have plenty
Yeah.
research that mentions Durban poisons and Roybards from back in the day. Show them that we've already discovered these genetics and that you can't patent it. It's
Exactly.
not yours.
Yeah. But then how do you... The thing is you've got to get hold of those
Which is where the
biogeneticists who
research
can
comes in again.
identify
You
it.
have to prove it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's where
so
research comes
but
in.
there's lots of clever people out there who I'm sure are going to sort it out for us.
Hey, busy with it in Israel.
Yeah.
Strong. Strongly.
Yeah, at least there've been a lot of research since the 70s.
Yeah,
Exactly.
that
Lucky
helps.
bastards.
Okay, let us know what you think in the comments as well. I think it's open for discussion, guys, and we'd
It
like
is, and
to
please
hear
don't
your
forget to
opinion.
vote on the poll and like, share,
'Cause
subscribe.
it is something that we could look at trying to protect in the future, maybe, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, no,
Exactly.
there's enough clever people in the world to work it out. For sure. For sure. So, Boomschlang, if we can get Warren on the blower if he's standing by. Oh, there you go. There's the beautiful brother.
Whereas, morning.
So as we mentioned earlier, we are talking Khoisan tonight, and it's Khoi and San. It's not the two together, okay? And who better to discuss this subject with us than our brother from Khoi Dank, who seems to be well oiled to join the show. Yes. So Joe, what will you be speaking to?
So Dale's in charge of the there.
Yeah,
English words.
so Khoisan protesters to grow greenhouse dacha on the lawns of the union buildings. Khoisan protesters have been squatting on the lawns for just over 2 years, actually.
Nearly 3 now.
They're a small group of people who occupy the lawns and as of recently, in April 21, erected their first greenhouse, which has been spotted growing a few dacha plants. Now, as you can see in the images, the one problem that authorities, or mainly the DA, have a problem with is that Mr. What does he call himself? King. Yes, Mr. King Khoi, SA. He likes to walk around naked, so that offends a couple of people.
Especially in Pretoria, you know, it's still quite conservative.
No, I think this story is important to bring up. Culturally, you can tell, like many of us who have cannabis as part of our living culture, it's important for their culture as well. And as part of their demands in recognizing their culture in our government, their language and their people, also the acceptance of them growing their plants that they use for medicine.
I just find it fascinating. I would just curious to find out if the cops are going to come in and bash down their cannabis. Growing weed on the garden, on the lawns of the union building. That's just
Maybe they've made it their
Legendary.
private
Must
space.
try.
So classic.
It is legendary.
legendary.
It's absolutely legendary.
we
yes.
stand by these guys.
It's the best civil disobedience
Yes.
that's
We
going
stand
on
by these
under our
guys.
noses.
It's liberating,
In the
actually.
garden of the parliament.
yeah.
So Warren, what you got to say, brother?
Yes, no. Good evening, good people. I vibes to you. Hope you're like a warm day.
Yeah.
It's very cold down here in the Eastern Cape on the coast, but we're keeping warm and dank. Yeah, it's a very interesting topic you guys are talking about tonight, you know, about the biopiracy as well as Aina Khoisan indigenous people. And the two talk to each other because, you know, if you look at indigenous cannabis, indigenous strains, genetics, and how important it is to protect these land races, many companies without mentioning them, have come here, have claimed these genetics, and you'll find South African and African genetics all over the world. And it's a bit of a pity and a shame that our people down in the ground that have preserved these genetics through prohibition, through prejudice, through police harassment, they have still maintained and preserved these genetics. So when you talk about biopiracy, it really strikes a chord with me as I would say an indigenous people's activist that looks at the effect of the modernization, of the globalization on indigenous growers and indigenous people, because the techniques in which we grow cannabis and how we look at not only the genetics of cannabis, but what we call the epigenetics of cannabis, the environmental factors that affect the development of these genetics. And I talk from a point of science, not just from a point of opinion. I had a very good chat with a professor yesterday, and he explained a lot of things to me about how when so-called geneticists breed lower THC cannabis or lower CBD cannabis, you're actually diluting the gene pool.
Yes.
And you're actually creating an inferior product, which has an effect on the greater development and gene dynamics. So that the biopiracy is something that we really need to be aware of and take note of what's going on in our cannabis community and industry. And I wish that government would take it more seriously, because like you say, Durban Poison, Transkei, those names are so renowned. Rooibos, they are so renowned with our indigenous genetics, our indigenous, I would say, identity. So that also talks to what is happening at the union buildings with the Khoisan brothers and the Khoisan community, and the stance that they are making. It talks volumes about that this land belongs to the indigenous people, and a group of that is the Khoi and the San. So, and we as Khoi and San, because I have heritage in that, we believe in the indigenous use of cannabis, and that it should be part of your herb garden. So the fact that they are going to the union buildings and kind of claiming land on that building from those that claimed land from them and growing cannabis is a sign of liberation. It's a sign of fire. It's. I think Jules would be smiling now to see that,
Yes.
So I really commend my brothers down there at the Pretoria Union buildings. Fire, more fire, yeah.
Hey, by the office.
We come to, yeah, man,
Don't walk past it.
And I'm glad that they're growing, and it's open, and the great thing is that the police seems that they're going to have to tolerate this, because we have a right to protest. So this is kind of like an indigenous people's protest. So it's actually it's a developing story. Yeah.
We might have to take a bit of a field trip one day, hey?
I think so. I think we're going to
meet the brothers.
I think we're going to send some people out to just go and meet the people sometime soon and set something up, and then we'll do a little outside broadcast from the union buildings. I mean, wouldn't that be great? But I think when it comes to both the biopiracy and the protection of our land races and the protection of our First Nations people, I think that we also need to be quite positive, apart from the fact that there's lots of very, very clever people out there working on the cannabis plant. More research needs to be done. We have got a heritage since we've had democracy in South Africa of big court cases that have been won. Look what happened with Scaletium. If anybody knows what happened with Scaletium, is that the people of the Northern Cape won their case, and Scaletium can't be used without those communities getting some sort of a royalty. And we've seen it with rooibos tea and with buchu. So I think with the cannabis plant, the fact that this conversation, it's not only starting now, This conversation has been going on for as long as I've been an activist, you know?
Exactly. And the structure exists. If they're doing it for other communities with other plants, they can't say, oh, but now we've got to figure out how. The structure exists. Thanks. Just
and
apply it.
We've got amazing, also our fellow non-profits in South Africa. I'm just thinking of the African Centre for Biodiversity in Stellenbosch. And Julian and I went and visited them a few years ago, and it was a very, very interesting meeting, and the people are doing great work. And also now at the United Nations, now that we have had the cannabis rescheduling is over, at least for the moment, and we're moving more into this traditional use, particularly traditional medicine, because that's the way that they work at the UN, through the medicine. I think that this stuff is going to come more and more to the fore. And I think that South Africa can lead the way when it comes to it, because we already have a few of our local government people that are not too well known, who are working at this level with all sorts of plants and all sorts of cultural heritage, down to things like Indabeli painting. You know, suddenly some designer in New York has got an outfit walking on the catwalk with Indabeli printing on it, and no, you know, if you're not acknowledging where that print comes from, that is cultural appropriation. Isn't it?
No, it's biting off their culture.
I don't know. Don't you think it's cultural appropriation, Russ?
Yes. Yeah, you know, to a certain extent, you know, cannabis is appropriated by so many, so we would understand that people would love South African and African cannabis, and
good answer.
I just feel that, you know, that like the broader community, the international community, owes it to our terpenes, owes it to our genetics, you know. And I think to a certain extent there's a social responsibility on these so-called companies that have benefited from this appropriation of our genetics, you know, that are core to the development of the broader strains and genetics. So for me, I feel that we are starting the right conversation. We're not where we're supposed to be. Prohibition, especially in South Africa, has caused us not to allow us to develop our land races fully. I speak to a lot of indigenous growers that travel through these networks, and they say prohibition has caused them to harvest early. Seed production hasn't been, they haven't been the ability to pick the best plant, the best pheno. So the consciousness and the science of breeding hasn't been applied because prohibition has restricted that. So if the cops and government can just back off and allow, and like Jules said, can just unleash this plant and allow it to develop,
yes,
I think it will be a great thing for African genetics in general. So yeah, continue the work, keep the fire burning.
Great, thanks so much. We're going to have to be moving on. It's great to see you. And tomorrow, in 2 weeks, we're going to be heading down to the coast for the Canna Cup, and then I'm going to be traveling back up via East London and Kids Beach and PE, and I'm going to be visiting some of our cannabis family along the way, and Brother Warren and his 420 cannabis socials in East London. So really looking forward to that, really looking forward to the Garden Route Canna Cup. We've booked our accommodation, everything's rocking and rolling on that side, and we're going to be doing a live Hotbox transmission from down in Plettenberg Bay. That first weekend of August. So that's going to be great fun. And now we have to keep moving on because of the curfew and the crew have to get home, and it's freezing cold. So let's have a look at what's on Instagram for tonight. Boomslang's busy lining that up. Oh, that's great.
We're going to fly through them quickly.
Okay. That last one is beautiful. Oh, look how interesting.
Bonsai.
Ooh, Dag Gardens. How pretty.
That is gorgeous.
Yeah, lovely winter colours. Charles, you puffs, we haven't seen you for a while. Oh, Tipsy Cola.
Pretty. Sure. I love that.
That-
That's like bonsai vibes.
Yeah.
Try it out.
Yeah.
That's very
Flower
that's very interesting. The one with the big leaf behind it. Yeah. So I'm going to have to rush this a bit, but I think the minute that I saw the two small leaves and the one big leaf, let's just go through them again.
This one, Dag Gardens.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Congratulations, Dag Gardens.
Dag
In our
Gardens.
slightly rushed, I'm sorry, Instagram tonight, but please keep your photographs coming. On Instagram, on Facebook, as long as you put hashtag Hotboxshow. That's all you need to do, and we will sift through them and we'll choose the 5 finalists every week. And then back to our poll. So we've been speaking about research and biopiracy and land races and all of that. So do we really need more research in the field of dacha? And for sure, 62%, analysis paralysis 0%, and then overgrow the government 38%. Wow, what a nice
That's a pretty
balanced thing. So nobody thinks that we don't need any more research.
Yeah, no, definitely we need
We
more.
don't need more research to be an excuse for stopping the progress on the other side.
but-
We can
Still
let people
overgrown.
out of jail while we do some research,
Yeah.
and we can also stop
At
putting
least.
people in jail while we do some
At
research.
least.
We highly encourage
Exactly.
research
Yeah.
into police corruption as well.
But still overgrown.
Exactly. So thank you to those people that voted in the poll, and we'll try and keep these polls coming. Every week we think, oh, what we're going to do, and then somebody smokes just the right strain, and they
Just
come up
the
with an
right
interesting
time.
poll that has to do with our themes. And as always, if there is anything that you would like to be shown featured on the Hotbox Show, please let us know. There's dozens and dozens of different ways of getting hold of us, but the best way is on our website. If there's a contact form on our website, you can send us a little contact form, or you can always give Charles a ring on our office number, particularly if there's an emergency and you need to get a hold of us in a hurry. And as always, Fields of Green's website is an absolute encyclopedia of stuff that's going on in cannabis in South Africa and Southern Africa. So please be sure to go there and have a little dig around. You know, it's grown so much over the years that some of the stuff is a little bit buried. But why don't you go now when the weather's really cold, go and have a surf around the Fields of Green website. And while you're there, go and have a look at our affiliates page, because as always, we'd like to thank those people who support us, and please support those who support Fields of Green for All, because without that, we wouldn't be coming to you live on this freezing cold night here in Johannesburg, South Africa.
But between
So-
them and the Green Network, they make sure we've got data.
Yes, exactly. You know, the data doesn't come free. So thank you to our affiliates. And what are you saying in closing, Dan?
No, you're right.
I want you to stay safe and keep warm and choose happy.
And I want you to light one up for Jules. See you next week.